Alright people, so welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our lecture series called Daily News and Shorts. In this lecture series, we cover the entire day's current affairs within 30 minutes. Now I know we haven't been fairly regular as far as current affairs lecture series is concerned, but we thought about starting from a fresh month. So from 1st April onwards, we will come with this lecture series every day so that your April month is sorted. Now remember, this lecture series is important for those aspirants who are giving next year's UPSC examination, because as far as those who are giving this year's prelims, well, for you guys, we have a separate batch called the Phoenix batch. Check that out as well. But those of you who are planning next year, this current affairs lecture series is extremely important for you because current affairs are extremely important. Almost 50% of your entire UPSC paper comes from current affairs. So make it a daily habit of covering current affairs. All right. And through this lecture series, we won't take much of your time as well. But provided just after watching this lecture, you revise it from the notes provided by us. That is extremely important. And the notes shall be shared on our Telegram channel, the link to which is given in the comment section just below this lecture. Okay. All right, then. Let's begin today's discussion. But first, let's take a look at the list of topics that we shall cover today. All right, then. So, daily current affairs, 1st April Tuesday, and here is the topics list. So, these were the 4 topics that were important from today's newspapers. Okay. Number 1, Transgender Persons Amendment Act. Basically, somehow government has kind of overturned various judicial precedents, various judgments by the Supreme Court with respect to transgender rights through this new amendment. So, we'll talk about this. Then, well, there was this article in the Indian Express newspaper which said that March, the worst month for Indian economy in the past 1 year. So why? What impact did the month of March, have on Indian economy? We'll talk about this. Then we'll talk about NASA's Artemis 2 mission. Okay, this is NASA's lunar mission. Basically, NASA is going to put boots on the moon. Okay, after so many years, after 50 years, NASA is finally going to land astronauts on the moon. So this is part of that mission. And in the end, we'll talk about bunker buster bombs. These bombs were used on Iran by USA. The name quickly explains what these bombs are all about. Generally, when your area is being bombarded, important people take shelter in bunkers. But USA has developed a special kind of bombs which can even destroy those bunkers. So what are these bunker buster bombs? What is the technology utilized by them? We'll talk about these things. So these are the 4 news items that we shall zero in our attention on. So let's start discussing them one by one, starting with topic number 1, and that is Transgender Persons Amendment Act. Now, who are transgender people? Well, transgender people are those people who are biologically male or female, but they don't identify with the gender attributed to males or females. So basically, they are, well, as per their psyche, well, they are born in the wrong body. So they are born in a male body, but they identify as a female gender, or they are born in a female body, but they identify as a male gender. Some of these people who have gender dysphoria, they do go for sex change operations as well, because now technology has given them this facility. Now, related to transgender people, the government had passed an act in 2019. But this time around, government has basically made some amendments. Now, you need to be aware of the context with respect to these amendments. What was the original law all about? And what are these amendments? And what has the judiciary said about the rights of transgender people? We'll talk about all these things. Okay? All right then. So, Transgender Persons Amendment Act 2026. Okay? Now, who are transgender people? Well, whose biological sex is different from the social gender or gender roles. These two are different. Okay, they don't identify with their biological sex and the roles attributed to that. These are transgender people. They're different from intersex people. Okay, intersex people are biologically different. Intersex people are, well, they are biologically neither male or female. Okay, so this differentiation should be, you should be aware of this. Intersex people, who are called eunuchs and many other names are given to them in different local languages, well, they are biologically neither male or female. They're born like this. But transgender people are born with proper biological genitalia and organs, but they don't identify with the gender roles. Now, you can't club them together. Intersex people have different challenges. Transgender people have different challenges. You can't club them together, and that is why different laws were created for this. Okay, now what is the context basically? First of all, Nalsa versus Union of India, the landmark 2014 judgment. Well, this judgment was also landmark from the perspective of, gay rights, okay, gay marriage. The landmark Supreme Court judgment that recognized transgender persons as the third gender and upheld the right to self identification as a part of personal autonomy. Right to life, Article 21, also includes right to self identification. So, transgender people were recognized under this. And freedom of expression also. If you want to express yourself as a woman or a man, you have that right as per the constitution. Okay, this was mentioned in Nalsa judgment. Then Navtej Singh Johar judgment decriminalized consensual same-sex relations and reinforced that identity lies in self-determination. Okay, well, even if you're born a male, well, you can choose a female's identity. Identity is all about self-determination. This was said by the Supreme Court. Then, Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act. Well, in the original legislative framework, government talked about the rights for transgender people. But now, with the amendments, well, some people are criticizing these amendments because they say that this might overturn this right to self-identification. How? Listen to me carefully, okay? So, what are these key amendments? Removal of self-identification. Look, Supreme Court in Nalsa judgment recognized that right to self-identification is your fundamental right under Article 21. What does that mean? Well, if you are born in a male body, you can declare that you are a female and you would be recognized as a female. Your identity as male or female is part of your own psyche. It is your own right. Okay? So nobody can decide who you are. It is you who can decide who you are. Clear? But this amendment removes the definition of transgender persons based on self-perceived identity. The government says, no, you won't be able to decide. It is we, the government, through a proper medical board, we will get to decide whether you have gender dysphoria or not and whether you should be categorized as transgender persons or not. It is not right to self-identification. The state would decide that. Okay. Mandatory medical certification. A certification of identity will now only be issued by district magistrate after recommendation from a designated medical board, which will be headed by a chief medical officer. So now you just can't declare that you're a male or female. First, you need to get a certificate that though you are in a male body or a female body, but you identify with the opposite gender. For that, you need a certificate from district magistrate, and district magistrate will consult a designated medical board. That medical board will examine you and check whether you have gender dysphoria or not, or you are just defrauding the public. You're just saying this that you're a male or a female. No, they would check. Mandatory surgery explicitly mandates gender reassignment surgery to obtain a revised certificate for a change in gender. And well, this board can also advise, mandatorily it would advise that go for sex change operation. And then you will be given a revised certificate. The first certificate was issued by DM, which told that you are a transgender person, trans man, trans woman. After surgery, you would be put in that category because now you have changed your biology. Now you will be male or female. Okay. Erasure of categories. Delete specific terms like trans man, trans woman, and gender queer from the official definition of the Act. Now there is no definition. I mean, the initial definition, which was based on self-identification, has been removed. So self-identification, which was identified by Supreme Court as an inalienable fundamental right, has been kind of overturned in this new law. Let's see what happens, because someone or the other would challenge these amendments in the Supreme Court. Once that happens, we'll talk about this topic again. But as of now, well, the legislature, parliament has overturned previous judicial precedents in a way. Okay. Now, impact on allied rights. Now, what would be the impact of these amendments on the rights mentioned in the earlier law? Education and employment. Courts previously directed boards to update certificates without medical proof. Earlier, you just had to declare. It was your right to self-identification. The Rajasthan High Court recently granted a 3% weightage to transgender persons in public sector. Okay, but noted that the new law might create fresh hurdles. Clear? So the thing is, Rajasthan High Court also said that there are certain areas where, well, in certain public offices, 3% reservation should be for transgender people. And who are transgender people? Well, they have the right to declare themselves. Okay. Marriage and family. In Superior versus Union of India, Madras High Court, the right to marry and the inclusion of trans women under the term bride were recognized. A biological male identifying as a female has the right to be categorized as bride in a proper marriage and marriage certificate as per the judgment of Madras High Court. And that declaration shall be right to self-identification. Political participation. Now, this is a tricky thing. And I guess that is why, because of this only, the government came out with this law that you have no right to self-identification. High courts have allowed trans women contest elections in seats reserved for women. Because you identify as a female, so you have been demanding that allow us to fight from seats. So a biological male can fight in seats, elections in seats which were reserved for females, because they said that they identify as a woman. And certain high courts have allowed that. So now your self-identification won't be allowed. The government has said that we will first you will be issued a certificate with the opinion of designated medical boards by the district magistrate. So these rights would get impacted now. You understand the whole issue. But the most important part is, please, because they can ask an MCQ or a mains practice question in which you can get confused. And that confusion will be related to intersex people and transgender people. Remember, these two categories are different. It is very important for you. In fact, it is important for everyone to know this difference. Okay. These people, intersex people, are, well, biologically neither male or female. Transgender people, well, biologically they are in one category, but they identify with the opposite category. Remember this part. Okay. All right. Now let's quickly shift our focus to next news item, and that is, well, March, the worst month for Indian economy. Well, you all know what is going on in Iran. And Iran is strategically located so that it can block energy supplies for Asian countries, including India and China. And this war has devastating repercussions for Indian economy and many other countries' economies. In fact, this war, if prolonged, can bring in global recession. Now, this war began in the month of March, and because of this war, things are not good for Indian economy. In fact, Prime Minister made a speech in Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha that we need to, as a country, stay united because things are not looking nice. Because as per the recent developments, well, the war is going to get prolonged. So let's see what happens. But what consequences this war has had on Indian economy? Let's talk about this. How has this war disrupted India's growth story? This is very important for us to know. We need to know the finer details. So let's talk about this. So March, the worst month for Indian economy. How so? What has been the impact? First of all, you need to know, why is March the worst month for Indian economy? Because of the Iran war. Iran war and the subsequent blockage of Strait of Hormuz, from where India gets its significant chunk of energy supplies. And what is included in energy? Crude oil and natural gas. And a lot of other products are dependent on crude oil and natural gas. That is why disruption of this alone can, well, hinder India's growth. And if this thing gets prolonged, if Strait of Hormuz is blocked for another 2-3 months, it can bring in recession in India, much like the COVID-19 lockdown. That is why the Prime Minister said that as a country, we need to stay united the way we were during COVID-19 lockdown. Okay, we need to be prepared for a repetition of such a situation. Okay, this is a serious thing. Strait of Hormuz problem is a serious problem for India. Now, how does this impact India? First of all, let's talk about the impact of this war and blockage of Strait of Hormuz on the macroeconomic fundamentals. So, as far as GDP growth forecast is concerned, the RBI and Ministry of Statistics had earlier forecasted that India would grow by 7.2% this year, the 2026-27 financial year. But now they have downgraded their forecast to 6.5 to 7%. And why? Because of this war, energy costs would be high because the supply has been disrupted. Higher demand for crude oil and natural gas, but supply has fallen, so prices would come up. So energy costs would be high, supply chain disruptions, and weakened private consumption. Why weakened private consumption? Well, if there will be high inflation, generally people have a tendency of buying cheap products. But if products have become expensive, people would demand less of those products. Yes, because now they are expensive. So this would reduce consumption, which would harm India's GDP. Because GDP, primarily 60% of India's GDP comes from private. 60% of India's GDP comes from private final consumption expenditure. The other parts are investment, government, and exports. But this is well close to 60%. So if this falls, GDP falls. Then average inflation is expected to breach RBI's 4% target. So RBI's target of 4% is set to get breached. Why? Because expensive crude oil and natural gas, well, would cause inflation directly and indirectly also. Okay. How indirectly? Well, directly because cooking fuel, LPG would become expensive, bulk diesel for transportation would become expensive. Indirectly, when transportation is expensive, everything is expensive. This pen is made in Chennai and it reaches me in Delhi through transportation. If transportation cost is high, the final cost of this pen would also be high. Everything would become expensive. Plus, fertilizers are made from natural gas, so there are second order effects as well. So, this would cause inflation. Plus, government's fiscal deficit is set to rise. Why? Because so that people do not feel the excess burden of high prices, government has to increase its subsidy on food and fertilizer so that people do not feel the heat. So government will increase its subsidy. Now that would cause fiscal deficit. Plus, people do not feel that the fuel has gotten extremely expensive. Government would reduce excise duty on fuel, taxes on fuel. So this would reduce government's revenue growth as well. So fiscal deficit is set to breach. So this is impact on macroeconomic fundamentals. Then the impact on external sector. First, we all know because rupee is depreciating. So this is causing problems. Okay. Trade deficit is going to widen because India imports 88% of its oil and 80% of its gas. Now, if the rupee depreciates and crude oil and natural gas becomes expensive because of supply disruption, India's import bill would increase. That would increase our trade deficit and current account deficit. This is really bad. And well, to stabilize the fall in rupee, the government is basically selling foreign exchange reserves. And because the government is selling foreign exchange reserves, well, government's forex reserves are coming down. You see, when rupee depreciates, RBI sells dollars in the market. And when RBI sells dollars in the market, then what happens? Well, its forex reserves are coming down, which is important. And remittances. India's current account deficit gets stabilized because we are receiving a lot of remittances. And many of our remittances come from Gulf countries. Now, if Indians are threatened in Gulf countries, how would they send these remittances? So these remittances, the much needed stabilizing force in our overall balance of payment, these are getting threatened. Because when we run trade deficit, that trade deficit is compensated for by many Indians living abroad sending money back home. But now this is under challenge. You understand? So, well, everything looks haywire. Then, sector-specific impact. Impact on MSMEs. Small-scale units in clusters like Pune and Ghaziabad are facing production cuts due to fuel shortages and rising input costs. Chemicals and solvents are becoming expensive. High global natural gas prices directly impact fertilizer production because natural gas is used in production of urea and DPT and all. Okay, not DPT, DAP, diammonium phosphate. This fertilizer shortage would lead to food shortage. And when demand for food is high, supply falls down. Food prices also increase. Financial markets. High volatility has led to an 8% drop in Sensex Nifty. All of this is going on, right? Now, what can the government do to stabilize this? First of all, monetary policy. The government, RBI earlier was thinking about cutting down interest rates to boost growth. Now RBI will stop that because cutting interest rates would further push inflation up. Then, utilization of strategic petroleum reserves. This would be done. Legislative action. Oil Fields Regulation and Development Amendment Act would be well utilized to give more oil exploration licenses so that crude oil exploration within India gets a boost so that we are not import dependent. And diversification. Well, we are highly dependent on Gulf. We need to diversify. So these are some of the policy actions. Right? All right, now let's move forward to third news item. Second topic is over. And third is NASA's Artemis 2 mission. Now, NASA was the first country to send astronauts on moon. After that, there was a lull. NASA stopped this, okay, sending astronauts to moon. But now, well, NASA is thinking about going back to that. Now NASA has superior technology. So now NASA is thinking of sending human beings on moon again. Now this program is known as Artemis program. Now under this Artemis program, it would be done in 3 phases. Phase number 1 is, well, sending an unmanned mission towards the moon. And phase number 2, which is going to begin now, is sending astronauts on a flyby mission to moon. So they would not land on moon, but just fly closer to it and come back just to test. And Artemis 3, phase 3, would lead to astronauts landing on moon. So Artemis 1 phase was completed successfully. Now NASA is set to launch Artemis 2. Okay, so we'll talk about Artemis. All right. So NASA's Artemis 2 mission. So this is the mission. Okay. So these are mission pillars. Okay, let me change the color. So these are mission pillars. Okay, this is Artemis 1, unmanned, this is manned, and this is final landing. Then Artemis 4 and 5 are also there. These are given in your notes, don't worry. Now these are the technologies that are being used. Okay, human landing system, new generation space suits. Space suits have been improved. Space launch system, core infrastructure, that is the rocket, Orion spacecraft. All these things are given in your notes. Just go through this. Now, we'll talk about the objectives of this mission. Artemis 2 is the first crewed mission under NASA's Artemis program following the successful uncrewed, that means no astronauts were there, in 2022. Primary goal, to test the Space Launch System rocket and Orion spacecraft with humans aboard for the first time. Mission profile, a 10-day flight that will fly 4 astronauts around the moon and back to Earth. No landing, remember, flyby mission. Trajectory, it uses a hybrid free return trajectory that spacecraft will fly past the moon using lunar gravity to slingshot. So it will fly past like a slingshot and come back to Earth. Okay, so it will have various phases. First, the launch would be there. Okay, then it will go in the high Earth orbit. For 24 hours, it will stay in high Earth orbit of Earth, where astronauts would test different systems. Then it would be launched to moon, flyby to moon, and then return to Earth, which is splashed down in Pacific Ocean. In Pacific Ocean, the spacecraft would drop and astronauts would be recovered from there. So this is the flight profile. Okay. Now, what technology is being used? New technology being used in this. Technology components. So Space Launch System, the world's most powerful rocket designed to carry heavy payloads beyond low Earth orbit. Okay, because for 24 hours, it will stay in high Earth orbit and then go to the moon. So you need a very powerful rocket. Orion spacecraft, the spacecraft on this rocket in which astronauts would be there. The crew capsule designed to sustain astronauts during deep space missions. It features life support systems and heat shields ever built. Because when the spacecraft would be coming back to Earth, it will face a lot of air resistance, raising the temperatures. So you need heat shields for that. An European service module provided by European Space Agency, it supplies Orion with electricity, propulsion, air and water. So all these technologies would get tested. So some more details are given in your notes. Do go through that as well. All right. And now we'll move on to last topic of the day, and that is bunker buster bombs. You see, American military technology is state of the art, is the best in the world. But Iran still is showing resistance, okay? Somehow showing resistance and somehow showcasing that technology has its limits. Nonetheless, nobody can take away from USA its technological superiority. Generally, when you are bombing a particular place, well, the important people of that area take shelter in bunkers. These bunkers are built deep underground, okay? So that bombs would fall on the ground and bunkers would keep the important personnel safe. But USA has developed such type of bombs which would be dropped. They would penetrate deep inside the ground, and once they reach the bunker, then they'll explode. So everyone inside that bunker would die. The bunker would collapse on itself. These are known as the bunker buster bombs, and USA has used them on Iran. Many important people in Iran have died because of these bunker buster bombs. Okay. Now, what is the technology utilized in these bunker buster bombs? Let's talk about this. Okay. So bunker buster bombs. A joint US-Israeli operation targeted an ammunition depot and military-linked sites in Isfahan, a central Iranian city. It is a strategic defense, Isfahan, hub hosting Badr Air Base and critical nuclear infrastructure. People say that, well, enriched uranium is there, including test reactor and uranium conversion facilities. The objective? To neutralize hardened underground assets ammunition stockpile amidst the Operation Epic Fury of Israel and USA. So Iran has stored most of their ammunition and arms in these underground bunkers. Those were to be destroyed using these bunker buster bombs. Now, what are bunker buster bombs? Okay, now see, this is a bunker underground. Now, the thing is, this bunker buster bomb, it penetrates underground, and once it reaches the bunker, then it explodes. And it has peculiar technology. You see, the thing is that once the bomb lands, well, then it explodes. But these bombs do not explode when they land. Well, they have special sensors. And these sensors tell the bomb. These are smart bombs, basically. These sensors tell the bomb that you have reached underground, and now underground you have reached a hollow space. Now explode. So it's very high-tech technology. Okay. So they have penetrators to penetrate the ground, gravity-driven kinetic energy. So there is kinetic energy because it is dropped from high altitudes. And void sensing fuses. So it has fuses and sensors. Once they sense a void underground, then they explode. Okay. Some examples of bunker buster bombs are GBU-27, GBU-57AB. Okay, GBU-27 is 2,000 pounds and GBU-57 is 30,000 pounds. That's a lot. Very heavy bombs. And not many aircrafts or fighter jets can carry these bombs. That is why generally B-52 bombers are used, which is again with USA. Okay, so USA is pretty advanced when it comes to military tech. They spend a lot of money also. Now, geopolitical significance of these bombs. Okay, so nuclear deterrence. The use of these bombs specifically targets Iran's policy of subterranean defense. By striking tunnels in Natanz, Fordo, the US-Israel signal that underground relocation is no longer guaranteed safeguard for nuclear assets. The only defense with Iran is to protect its nuclear assets is to move them underground. But USA is showing that even underground these assets are not safe. Okay, so this is one significance. The Trump doctrine. The strike aligns with US administration's warning. Iran must negotiate a new deal or face the destruction of its energy military infrastructure, including the potential blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. And shift in warfare. The conflict demonstrates a shift towards deep penetration missions. Okay, so these are some of the significance. Okay, but the technology is important, which is given in this image and explained in your notes. Now, please do not forget to revise these entire 4 topics from your notes. All right. Okay, then. On that note, I shall take your leave. Okay. So this is, well, we come to the end of this lecture. Now, please do not forget to revise this lecture from the notes. It's extremely important. All right. Yeah. With that, with this announcement, I shall take your leave with the promise of seeing you tomorrow with another set of news items. Thank you, everyone.